Hello everybody and welcome to Calfield Services channel. Today is a say it all, blast it out, throw it out there for everyone to take it. It's a free speech there. I'm going to throw out to you, the listeners, controversial takes that I have on how we can help our communities transform the situation that we find ourselves in this country. One, we have a serious problem of unemployment, particularly youth unemployment. This is a situation that has been escalating over the years. If I can recall well, between 2016 and now, it has only been getting worse. Every single year we churn out graduates in numbers from across all the institutions that we have in this country. Where do they go? Have we ever sat down and asked ourselves where they go? Yes, I know we are all aware that these people go into the streets and they find themselves with nothing to do, with no access to cash whatsoever, and with limited opportunities. But do we really know what they go through? Recently, particularly in the last few years, it has become pretty evident that there is a serious issue of drug abuse in this country. There is an issue of domestic violence, which is escalating all the time. There is an issue of, passion killings, people taking their own lives. And it has been quite far much more concerning because we see this happening to even people who we all thought were well off. We, again, on the other hand, are seeing reports, international statistic reports that shows we are one of the unhappiest countries in the world. What has happened to our country? What has changed over the years? We were once used to be the most peaceful country in around here or in Africa. It's quite funny because sometimes you would ask yourself, is poverty synonymous with peace? When people start advancing and, getting exposed to social media trends and, our country merging with other countries to become the global village, we sort of tend to lose our culture of how we presented ourselves to the international community. We have taken the Western culture, adopted it, and we have also adopted some practices that are, implemented by advanced countries. What comes along with those which we feel are advantages or positives of, that type of migration is the negatives that come with it. Now we are having issues of drug abuse. We are having an uncontrollable level of youth unemployment, which is really what I want to talk about today in this video. Like I have said from the beginning, I will be unscathed in this video. I'll just be saying my wild thoughts around what I think is the problem in this country and what I think can be done to help. You are all free to quash these opinions. Most of that I've not really done any research. It's basically what I think I've been observing around. You can also share your opinions to validate them or counter them with what you think is the actual problem. But it would make me very happy to know that you too acknowledge the dire situation we find ourselves in. When we change the government, and for the first time, for that matter, it was a historic milestone, a milestone that for many people saw as an opportunity to bear or to sow the new seed that would germinate a different caliber of plants that over the years would transform and, relieve our country from its challenges that we are having, which are non-ending really. But within a year or so, it is becoming more and more apparent that what ought to change remains the same, really. It's as if nothing has changed, and I'm not blaming the incumbent government I'm not blaming anyone here. I'm just trying to say we have problems that we seem to have no solutions for. We have problems that are leading our society, into paths of destruction. We find ourselves in a situation where it is really hopeless. I mean, we come up with national development plans, we talk about all these nice things, but we've always had recurring problems that we've never had answers for. And what I'm about to say here, controversial as it is, it's by no means not a foregone conclusion in terms of it being a solution. It's just my thoughts. I'm thinking if we can delve much more into some of these ideas, who knows what can come out of them? I mean, what can we possibly lose in exploring them and seeing whether these are some of the things that can help us, our country. So without any further ado, the first point that I want to touch on is the education system we have in this country. Over the years, especially during my time and going backwards, education was really everything. When you were told by your teachers and your parents when you were growing up that you need to study very hard, there was substance behind those words. There was conviction behind those words. I remember very well when I came through in the 90s, I just knew back then that you just needed to complete Form 5 and you'd get any type of a job that you'd want to get in this country. And that was possible back then. But over the years, it proved that you needed to have diploma as a minimum qualification for you to maybe become a teacher or any, respectable job. But even still, a few years down the line, degree was what you needed to attain for you to stand any chance of employment. All of a sudden, nothing can help you. We find ourselves in a situation where those that have master's degree and PhDs also find themselves in this environment where they are unemployed, either by design or through circumstances where, some jobs have got to trim down due to the unfavorable economic landscape, and we find such people coming back into the streets and becoming unemployed, like the fresh graduates who don't even get that opportunity at first hand to know what working feels like. So what can be done about our education such that it churns out the types of graduates that are in demand out there? In terms of the sectors or the industries that we are lacking, I think that is public knowledge. However, even if we take our own students through the institutions to do the courses that would put them in a position to maybe stand an opportunity to get these jobs, we continue to observe, sadly, that the market doesn't take these people because they either feel they are not a good fit, irrespective of the education they've attained from the institutions, they still lack the experience or the mental shift that is required for them to hit the ground running when they are employed. There are obviously some other reasons around there. Some organizations don't want to go for highly educated individuals because they don't want to pay them what is worth to them. So there are so many intricacies around the employment sector around this country that is detrimental to the graduates who have attained the qualifications from the local institutions particularly. So what can be done here to make sure that this gap is narrowed down so that there is this common understanding between the economic landscape and the institutions? Because from what I've been seeing is that, the jobs out there, the public sector or the private sector, they are crying of the fact that, I don't know whether it's a fact or it's a myth, that graduates are not job fit material. And because some of these organizations do not want to establish a training a training center or whatever you may call it, a training unit in the institution, so that they're able to groom these graduates to become what they want. Then those graduates find themselves, grappling with unemployment and the dire effects of it. So my plea here is that the particularly the private sector, every institution, every organization, every company, every association must establish a talent acquisition, talent development unit that will be able to nurture these graduates who are out there to become part of the pipeline and become graduates that are of substance to them, so that they're able to employ these people and use them to help them grow their organizations. If we are unable to develop graduates that can influence the entrepreneurial landscape of our country, we'll never be able to produce enough jobs that can, quench the thirst, the unemployment thirst that we are experiencing in this country. Until that approach is amalgamated and institutionalized, we shall not progress further, in my opinion. So this is something that we need to do. There's obviously no way it can be, enforced by the government, but it's something that can be encouraged. And for those that have the foresight and the vision to transform, the lives of Botswana, this is a step you cannot afford to not, incorporate in your institution, in your organization, in your company, irrespective of the size of that organization, small or big. You have to have the ability to develop talent, to identify talent, develop talent, nurture talent, let that talent blossom and create more opportunities for those that come after them. That is one of the ways we can trickle down our generational inheritance to those that can keep it going as a going concern in the long term. Another thing that I think we need to look at as a country, particularly from the education sector now, is looking at the educational setup of this country, from the primary schools all the way to institutions. We do not have structures that facilitate graduates who will become industry ready when they complete their education. What do I mean by that? We are having primary schools, we are having secondary schools, we are having universities and colleges who are all theoretical in nature. Even if they are practical, they do not have enough support structures where these children can go and practice as they grow along. If a child starts standard 1 at 6 years old and they go all the way to Form 5, and at that time they're around 18 years old, and then after that they become lucky enough to go into institutions. By the time they leave the institutions, they're at least 20 years or over. Why are we not creating an institutional breeding ground that will enable these students such that by the time they reach that age 20, they have at least 5 years of hands-on experience, at least in one type of industry? For example, if it's people who are learning about textiles, why can't we have someone who has 5 years experience hands-on on textiles when they graduate at age 20 or age 22 or whatever age they finish, so that these people are either ready to be financed to establish their own enterprises that can create jobs for the less privileged, or are in a position where the private sector would find them attractive enough to give them jobs outright and let them transform the economic landscape through the services and products provided by these private sector organizations. So what do I mean by we don't have enough structures that facilitate graduates that would be market ready? I will give an example. In fact, it's not an example. I will say what I think. I believe that if we have students who, one of the things that we can do right now, particularly at primary school level, from standard 1 to 7, I think it's okay to teach children almost everything. because at that level you are trying to develop their mind, you are trying to inculcate the spirit of is it intrusiveness, intuition or whatever, that you are developing that mind to be able to think beyond the limit confines of maturity at that level, so that they're able to understand the world faster, so that they mature quickly and get to a point where now you can give them proper real life lessons that they can use to change or affect the communities they live around. So the education system as it is, you know I can't complain much about it, but what I would want us as a country to look into is establishing some incubation centers where these children can be taught some life skills, such that these life skills can help them become better people. For example, like for kids, you need to have coaching programs or establishments that would allow them to hone their physical skills, be it running, be it playing games like football, chess, all these games that have made the world around us richer. Those advanced countries have millionaires who have become that because of honing their skills through these games. We have seen over recent years that we have talent in abundance when it comes to athletics in this country. It's not only athletics, there are a couple of sports that we are doing well in this country. If we can just help our children focus, develop that competitive edge at a young age, then I can assure you these are the people who can make life out of these sports. And it's not only about them, it's about the lessons that will trickle down to those who come after them due to the experiences they accrue through these setups. That's another thing that we really need to look into as institutions, as the government, as the communities around us. And then the other point I want to move to is the structure which the government employs people, this permanent and pensionable employment structure that we have in this country, where you work and you work until you are removed either by death or retirement, is not a structure that I think is empowering anybody if you look at it properly. Because what it does is that being an employee it creates someone who becomes comfortable due to the finances they earn regularly on a monthly basis. So those people are able to create the life and culture around which satisfies them and their children. But what we don't realize is that at the time when they retire or when they die, usually whatever it is they would have accrued through savings or the small, erratic investments they would have done normally gets depleted when it's passed down to the generation that takes over when they are no longer able to continue to sustain that. However, the problem here is that someone is going to work in the government or in the public sector for 20, let's just say we have 10 people who are permanent and pensionable, employed by the government of Botswana when they were 20 years old, and they have stayed there until they reach retirement age at 60, and that's when they leave that post. These people would have been employed at a lower scale, and they would have grown with the system, advanced across the scales to get to the top. Some of them don't really get to the top because it's difficult to progress in the public sector. For those that have worked there, they know what I'm talking about. But the problem is, since they are paid these limited wages over these years, they tend to survive in nature because the money is only enough to allow them to survive. So the problem here is that they stay entangled in those jobs for all those years. They leave those jobs, poor, because they've never had enough money at any point in time, to accrue and change their lifestyles for good. However, what I want to propose is that why can't we change the model? Look at employing people for maybe about, contract-based model, where you give someone a 5-year contract and then you pay them well enough. You don't pay them that minimum wage because these are graduates from school. You pay them sufficient salaries that should be paid to experts. And then these people get into the government system, they do what needs to be done. In exactly 5 years' time, they leave the system, they get their gratuity, and they move on. So by paying them handsomely, you give them an opportunity to find ways to transform their lives while they're still employed, because they full well know that after 5 years they will leave the system and they would have to continue surviving wherever they go. So in that 5 years' time, another graduate will take over that role. You employ another graduate, they do the same thing, and then after 5 years they leave the system. So in about 50 years, you would have employed about 10 people rather than 2 people that you would have employed in that time. So these 10 people, when they leave their job, because they would have somehow set up something to sustain themselves, they would have been in a position to employ 1 or 2 people through those settings. So they're able to also, cut down on the unemployment rates that we have in this country. At the same time, the government would have helped them set up to become the people that they are. So I think this is something that will not only give everyone an opportunity to work, but it would also effectively improve the service delivery, the quality aspect of it. Because if someone is working on a contract and they know they're working on a time on a time bomb, really, they will ensure that they give their all, such that when they leave the structure or that system, they have made a name for themselves, so that they continue to become marketable in other spheres or walks of life. So the other point that I would want to touch on, which I think we need to look at, is yes, I did talk about mentorship. I did talk about the culture of developing talent, identifying, nurturing talent, developing talent. And maybe the other thing that is also important here is how we can support those who are already out there trying to do something. These are small business people. These are people who are volunteering their services to try and gain experience and to try and share with their skills to help the communities they live around. We need to find ways of, creating services and products, or opportunities for this category of people, so that we develop them, so that their services are able to help the communities they live around. So for me, if we can find ways of, having a footprint in all the points that I've laid out here, in the long run, we will change the culture of our people. We will also create opportunities for the young ones that are coming through, and we will also be able to cut down on the import bill, because if people are trained and have skills that allow them to provide services and goods, then it means we'll be able to close the gaps that we have in this country, and some of the products that we don't have, we'll be able to generate in this country. And in the long run, the burden will be reduced with regards to the import bill that we are experiencing. This is by no means a fully researched, it's a fully researched set of opinions. They are just ideas that I've been thinking around the problems that we find ourselves grappling with. So I would encourage each and every one of you, to share your own story, share how you think we can develop our communities, so that this problem, the prominent problem here is unemployment, youth unemployment, poor money circulation due to unemployment rates, which are very, very high. So if we can talk about these things, then we can hopefully create solutions around them. The next time when I delve on this topic, I'll be looking into how communities can play a role in trying to generate jobs within their localities, in trying to help abate youth unemployment and the negative consequences that are a result of youth that are idling around and grappling with the painful challenges of unemployment. So let's look at these topics, let's discuss them, share ideas. Hopefully, the government can borrow one or two of these ideas and try them out. The public sector can also do likewise and try and implement them and see if none of them can work. Having said that, bye bye for now.